certain areas around the state and around the country. The City of Des Moines and its Sustainability Office and other programs have goals to significantly increase green infrastructure and to support our natural ecologic systems. And whereas the City of Des Moines wishes to incentivize its citizens to take meaningful action on their properties to increase pollination habit, and whereas the ideal pollinator-friendly habitat is comprised of native wildflowers, grasses, vines, shrubs, and tree blooming in succession throughout the seasons. And whereas the formative period for establishment of pollination direct insect species occurs in the late spring and when pollination species emerge. Be it resolved that the City of Des Moines, its sustainability program, and partnering organizations jointly recognize No Mow May to promote and educate the community about the critical period of pollinator emergence and the generation of pollinator supporting habitat in spring. Be it therefore signed that signage will be spread around to encourage and be placed in the lawns of the participants. And now, therefore, I, Mayor of the City of Des Moines, on behalf of our City Council and all of our residents of Des Moines, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2023 as No Mow May and encourage all of our citizens to observe this great event. Thank you. Let's get a quick, let's get this out of the way. We'll get a All right, we're going to try to move as quickly as possible. This is our April 10th meeting. This particular meeting before the start of our city council meeting is going to be the Municipal Housing Agency Governing Board. I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask the clerk to please take roll.
County.
Here.
Boson.
Here.
Voss. Here. Westergaard. Here. Mandelbaum.
Here.
Gatto.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Item 2 is approving the agenda as presented and or as amended.
Move.
Second.
You can vote this, yeah. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, we'll move to item 3. Item 3 is a hearing and adoption of amended Municipal Housing Agency annual budget for the fiscal year ending June 30 of 2023. Council, any questions, thoughts, or a motion?
Move item 3.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Ask everybody. Would anybody from the public like to make a comment regarding the hearing on the adoption of the Municipal Housing Agency annual budget? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. Ask everybody to vote.
6 yes.
Item 4 is a hearing and adoption of the proposed Municipal Housing Agency annual budget for the fiscal year ending June 30 of 2024. Ask any member of the public like to make comment on this one.
I see none, Your Honor. I'll move item 4.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Ask everybody to vote.
6 yes.
Item 5 is approving the certification to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development of the amended operating budget for all projects for the fiscal year ending June 30 of 2023 and of the proposed operating budget for all projects for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2024. Council? It's been
I'll
moved
second.
and seconded. Ask everybody to vote.
6 yes.
Item 6 is approving the annual agency plan for the fiscal year beginning July 1st of 2023 to include the 2023 capital improvement grant and the public housing admissions and continued occupancy policy, the family self-sufficiency action plan, and Section 8 housing choice voucher administrative plan. This was board communication number 23-168. We'll quickly again ask the public if there's any germane comments in regard to this.
I see none, Your Honor. I'll move item 6.
I'll second.
Yeah. Question is whether it was grand or grant. It's a grand grant. Thank you.
6 yes.
All right, item 7 is a motion to adjourn.
Move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Have a voice vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody in opposition? Hearing none, we sit adjourned. All right. We'll move quickly to our city council meeting. We had our proclamation. I will call the meeting for June 10th, the Des Moines City Council to order and ask the clerk to please take roll.
County.
Here.
Boson.
Here.
Voss.
Here.
Westergaard. Here. Mandelbaum.
Here.
Gatto.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, and just make sure everybody understands that this is April 10th. Are you good? All right, he's good. All right, item 2 is approving the agenda as presented and or as amended.
Move.
I'll second.
I will quickly mention a couple of things. We have item 41, it was added, it's consideration of a 5-day Class C liquor license, beer wine for the Great Caterers of Iowa for the Ronald McDonald House fundraiser on April 20th of 2023, and I sponsored that. Other than that, those are the...
I'll move it, Your Honor. I think that's 4I, right? It looks like 41, but I think it's 4I.
Okay, let's go with 4I.
It is.
I'll move it with that small correction.
I'll second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none. Let's go to item 3. Item 3 is approving the consent agenda tonight. Those are items 3 through 54. Generally, these are routine items and will be enacted by one roll call vote without separate discussion unless pursuant to the council rules, the council requests an item be removed to be considered separately. This evening, I'm going to vote no on item 5, and Councilmember Gatto wishes to speak on item 43.
Move approval, Your Honor.
Been moved and
6
seconded?
yes.
All right. Takes us to item 55. All right. This evening, quickly, for our hearing items this evening, the hearings, we have 2 conveyance hearings, 4 zoning hearings, items 57 to 60, 1 HUD hearing, 1 license hearing, 3 budget hearings, and 1 public improvement hearing. As a reminder, for the zoning items only, we're going to ask the people and the parties in interest to speak first, and that's either the applicant or anybody that lives within 250 feet that has been noticed by the city. After all the parties in interest have commented, we'll then open it up to anybody, member of the public, for germane comments. To aid in recognizing those parties in interest who may speak, I will request everyone else not step to the microphone unless they are one of those parties. And anyone who approaches the mic that is not is going to be won't be recognized, not only for that item but the remainder of the meeting, and will be required to leave. For the HUD and budget hearings, any interested person may make germane comments at not to exceed 1 minute per person. For all other hearings this evening, any interested person may make germane comments at not to exceed 1 minute per person to a maximum of 5 minutes per hearing unless the hearing is added sooner or ended sooner for failure to make germane public comments or when comments cease. As a reminder, on the public improvement items, only comments as to the plans, specifications, form of documents, and engineer's estimate and low bidder designation will be considered germane. So with that, let's quickly move into our hearing items, and let's note that it's 5:09 that we start. Item 55 is on the conveyance of a portion of vacated 41st Street located east of and adjoining 4126 Ingersoll Avenue to Plymouth Congregational Church Foundation for $90,890. Council communication number 23-181, and we'll quickly open it up and see if there are any germane comments from the general public. Item 55 has been moved and seconded. Ask everyone to vote.
6 yes.
Item 56 is on a conveyance of a portion of a vacated alley right-of-way located east of and adjoining 835 41st Street to Sarah J. McCurdy. Again, germane comments from the public on this item. Anyone?
Seeing none, Mr. Mayor, I'll move item 56.
I'll second.
Item 56 has been moved and seconded. Again, ask everybody to vote.
6 yes.
Item 57. Item 57 is on a request from Park Indy LLC. Abby Gilroy is the officer to amend Plan DSM, creating our tomorrow plan to revise the future land use classification from low-density residential within a neighborhood node to community mixed use within a neighborhood node, and to rezone the property located in the vicinity of 3140 Indianola Avenue from NM Neighborhood District to NX2 Neighborhood Mixed District to allow the redevelopment of the property with multiple household residential units. A is the first consideration in the ordinance above. B is the final consideration in the ordinance above. The waiver is requested by the applicant and requires 6 votes. Again, we're going to quickly ask for the parties in interest. The applicant, first is the applicant in the room. Would you like to make any comment?
Good evening, Abby Gilroy with Neighborhood Development Corporation, 2331 University Avenue. Just stopping in, we've held some neighborhood meetings, our planning and zoning hearings prior to this evening, and have had a lot of support. We did address any concerns that were happening kind of around the site and adjacent to the project, but really excited for the redevelopment of this. It's been a long time coming. We've worked for a couple of years now with the previous owner, kind of cleaning up that site and finding housing for folks, and ready to redevelop and create a little bit better environment for those walking by and living in the area. So, are there any questions this evening for us?
If anybody has any, we'll take them. Otherwise, remain available. Yeah.
I will.
No question, just comments. Abby, I can't thank you enough. This has been a long haul for both of us.
Yes, for sure.
This was a goal of mine for 8 years to find a place for those folks to live,
Yes.
and we did that first, and then we moved forward. And this is a great plan that you're putting forward. So I would be happy to move 57A and B.
All
We
right.
would
Thanks again.
appreciate the support.
Yeah.
We
This
need
will be
to
great.
see, is there any other parties in interest within 250 feet? Seeing none, are there any other parties from the general public who would like to make germane comments? All right, seeing none, we've got a motion and a second. Ask everyone to vote. You're going to move A and B?
I did.
Okay.
Thank you.
6 yes.
Item 58. Item 58 is on the request of TB Building LLC. Stephen Rooney is the officer to amend Plan DSM, creating our tomorrow plan to revise the future land use classification from low-density residential to business park and rezone 1202 Thomas Beck Road from NX1 Neighborhood District to EX Mixed-Use District to allow multiple uses, including a religious assembly, fabrication and production, and an office. Choose one alternative below. A would be to approve 1, the first consideration, the ordinance above. 2 is the final consideration, the ordinance above. The waiver is requested by the applicant and requires 6 votes, or to deny. We'll start out. First, ask, is the applicant in the room? Would you like to step up and make any comment?
Hi, Stephen Roney, 1202 Thomas Beck Road, the applicant. I purchased this building about a year ago, rented it from the previous owner, the Printer Inc. Then there was a foreclosure. I took it over with the transition and rented it from the bank after that, and then became the owner last year when I made the purchase, the biggest purchase of my life. And after that, it's a 60,000 square foot building. I ended up renting it to a cabinet maker. Part of it, my business occupies about 25,000 square feet of the 60,000 square feet. I rented part of it to a cabinet maker, and then another 7,000 square feet or so I rented to a Hispanic church of about 80 people. I realized I got the cart in front of the horse with not rezoning it first. So my appeal today is just to try to get the property rezoned so that I could keep my commitments to my current tenants and provide more jobs in the Des Moines area. We are just right off the DART bus stop. We employ between 7 and 14 people, depending on the time of the year, and would like to grow that. And then I think we have a really clean building, a really nice commercial building on that side of town. And I know the plan is to make it larger and nicer throughout and just continue development. But I have met with several of the residents around me, went to the neighborhood meeting with about 24 people at that, and did have full support of the neighborhood and with also some of the businesses around me as well. I know it's not the 5-story high rises that's in the plan, but I'm in sort of at the end of the area where I think across the street there's going to be commercial buildings. My spot is a commercial building that's a precast building that I think as long as it's well maintained, it's going to survive quite a long time. So I don't think it's too economical. I've ran the numbers. It's not economical for me to try to convert it or to demolish it and then add townhomes or something like that. So my hope is that I could rezone this in order to not have to go to the zoning board of adjustments and then potentially have my back up against a wall. And based on some language that I know that they would be familiar with, is I couldn't get a reasonable return for the building based on chapter 135 6.7.7 says the zoning board of adjustments has to the subject property cannot yield a reasonable return from any use permitted by the subject zoning regulations. And so my hope is that I could get this rezoned so that I don't fall into that tough spot. And if that is not the case, would I be able to get some sort of continuance or opportunity so that I don't have to wait 12 months to come back here again? I think it's a good piece of fabric of what's been around and could be implemented well into the future.
Go ahead.
But, I mean, it'd be great to have staff come up and answer your questions, but we've talked, the issue that you have, you will, I think, have a very, very good case. We can't speak for the zoning board of adjustment, but have a very good case to get that variance so that you can fill the building, because you cannot, as the building exists, fill the building without having that ability to allow these uses and rent for tenants. We had a chance to have a conversation, and I know you're really nervous about the zoning board of adjustment process. We want you to be successful. We get the issue with the building, and that this building is going to be around for a long time. When we talked, and I know this whole council went through a process recently, we approved the South of Grays Lake Master Plan. And we don't want to start undermining that plan because we make an exception for one, we likely will get requests for similar exceptions. We understand the situation that you're in, and again, think what you were trying to do is appropriate for that spot, and the appropriate way to do so is to get, at least in my opinion, a variance from the Zoning Board of Adjustment. And I think if Mike Ludwig could maybe talk a little bit about the process.
Yeah.
And I know we can't give you the exact guarantee, which is, I know, what makes you nervous. But I think we can, he can address at least some of that in terms of how.
Okay, we've asked Mike to come in, and so, Mike, would you want to make a couple of comments?
I just need to ask the applicant a question.
Okay. You want to, so we were Mike and then get back to that?
Either way, yeah, that's fine.
Mike?
Okay. Mayor, members of the council, Michael Ludwig, Deputy Director of Development Services. You are correct. If the zoning is denied, the applicant can seek a use variance from the Zoning Board of Adjustment. There is no time delay, I guess, in requesting that. If they were denied that request, they could submit a different zoning application immediately without requesting a year or waiting a year. But they could request that, and it'd just have to be a change in their application to some extent, so maybe a different zoning district than they had sought before if that doesn't work out. I want to be very clear, the staff is supportive of a use variance for the property, so we would be supporting that to the Board of Adjustment. And again, I think that allows an interim use of the property and value of the building to be realized, but then still protects our overall redevelopment plans for the area.
So to the comment on that you read about the value increasing, that's,
Connie, we got Joe that had his
Sorry.
hand up.
Go
And,
ahead,
Sorry.
you can finish.
go
I
ahead.
was just going to ask him a question, so.
Yeah, we aren't going to particularly look at the assessed values.
Okay.
They've gone over. It's really more the long-term use of the property.
Joe?
So for you, what's your business?
We have an e-commerce. We have an e-commerce operation. We're in the kind of the liquidation goods of buying overstock and excess product, and then we resell it on different marketplaces.
Okay. So that building's not very old. I mean, that building's probably less than 20 years old, isn't it?
I think it was 1989.
Okay.
So it's been around a minute.
And so with the master plan that we've got, we're thinking we're going to tear down that building? Is that what the
No.
long-term goal would be,
No.
to tear that building down?
No,
Okay.
and it's a master plan that you were part of approving. And
Yeah.
it looks at that whole area where that's not the only warehouse building.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is how do you deal with, the long-term signal piece, which we've zoned for different uses in that whole area to the north, all south of Grays Lake. There are existing buildings, and there are mechanisms for accommodating existing uses. The use variance is a very good example of a way that we can accommodate for that while still setting out a vision for what that area could be in the future.
This gentleman purchased a building, probably wasn't very cheap. He's started his own business. He's doing what he needs to do to survive. And we went through the process of changing this zoning. You probably couldn't have had your religious assembly in there when it was zoned before. I don't know, but I mean, we're going to make him go through another step, possibly risk not getting it, and then coming back to us and asking for another rezoning for something completely different. I just think that, I would be supportive of rezoning it and being fine with it. It's not going to change use. That building's not going anywhere. He's right. It's precast. It's solid. It's not going anywhere. It's not getting torn down. It's not. If anything, the buildings to the north are much older and much more in tough shape. And that is all. You've got everything from warehouses to Confluence to everything else on that other side of the road. This guy's just trying to operate a business, and he's using part of it as a church assembly. I don't know why we wouldn't, and I don't know, maybe you are willing to approve it, but I would be in favor of approving it and moving forward. There's nothing wrong with what he's trying to do, and I don't know why we would make him go through another step. It's already hard
Okay,
enough.
let's see if there's any other parties in
business
interest. Stay available, don't go anywhere. Are there any other parties in interest?
Steve and my son played basketball together, we went to state together, and Steve called me up and said, I'm an architect for 30 years.
Would you kind of announce yourself and give us your name and address, please?
Name and address.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Yeah, my name is David Lagerman. I represent Lagerman Architects, and I'm glad to be here. If I put this on this thing here, you can program.
We can see it.
You'll see it too? Okay.
See it on the screen here.
Oh, sure. Well, that's really tiny. Do you zoom it in?
They'll zoom out.
Zoom out, okay. There you go. You can see the different places. The yellow is his warehouse, the brown is the shop, and the church is the blue, and the office is the green. One of the things as I began to study this thing, it had to do with the NX1 zoning that was the council, the city wanted to do. And I don't, can I put that on here too? Just take this,
Yeah,
roll this
sure.
away now?
Set it right on top.
Yeah,
Set it right there.
I can zoom in
Okay.
on it.
Can you see that pretty good? Okay, let me just read this. This is not my words. This is just straight out of chapter 134, and I have to comply to this, and I'm trying to figure out how to do it. Annex 1 says, is intended for a, it's, every word's important too. It is intended for a mix of single and smaller scale multifamily household uses and building forms to preserve the scale and character of the existing neighborhood while allowing for new infill housing. The property just directly to the west of this property is a housing project, and they're going to do 9 buildings. They're going to be 4 units each. They're going to be condos. And one thing about a condo is you got to have a front door, and you got to have windows in the front to the street, and you got to have windows to the back for the bedrooms. And this building that Steve owns here is 315 feet long and 202 feet in depth. Now, I'm an architect, but I can't figure out how to get a door to the front of the building and then windows in the back of the building when the back of the building is 200 feet. And the condos that they're putting in are 9 of them, and they're about 40 feet wide. And so the end units will probably have windows on 3 sides, and the 2 in the middle will probably have windows in the back and in the front. But I don't know how you get this building to go with chapter 134 is when it says it's intended for small-scale housing or small, like that. The building's 20 feet tall, and, you know, I don't know how to do it without tearing it down. Poor guy. Stephen's got $3.2 million in this building, and he's always lived in Des Moines, went to Drake, went to the Great College of Drake campus here, learned business, and I don't know what went wrong with his system, but his first project he did was down on campus, and he was going to do these sunbathing booths or whatever. And it didn't go very well. There was some bad stigma about the sun machines and so forth, so he lost his business. And it's pretty hard to come straight out of college, take everything you've learned, and then go busted. Now, this is his second project for this young man, and now this would also bust him again. I just don't think that this would be a very good deal. If you've ever taken on a calamity like that, you know, it's hard to hold your head up. Your arms feel like they're dragging on the floor. But I don't even see practically how you could ever do this with a building that's 200 feet in depth. But that's my comments, is all. Thank you.
So this wasn't about making housing. I don't think anybody has a problem with the business. It's just more the zoning, how we could do the variance and keep the zoning for the rest of the area, which is there.
So Mike, did this trigger because of the church? Is that why it triggered a rezoning? Or is it because of the other uses that he has?
Well, we had done work as part of the master plan for that whole corridor. So there's dense housing along the south side of Grays Lake on the north side of George Lake Parkway, and this was going to be a transition to the single-family residential further to the south. He went in there and they occupied it. They have some uses that were not allowed in the EX district. The church is one. And so basically, they came in for a rezoning, and because we have that master plan in place, it's calling for the residential future redevelopment. That's what we've elected to follow, is the master plan that was developed for the corridor.
So, but Mike, so it was a printer. It's always been a printer shop.
Understood.
So when we went through and did the rezoning
Understood.
with our master plan, or when we rezoned it, you and staff decided not to zone that for its original use, what it was built for. We decided we were going to zone it for something completely different, and that's fine, but that's not what the use was when it was in play. And then it went belly up, and so now he's got millwork and he's got a warehouse, and the church probably doesn't fit into it, but I don't understand why it wasn't zoned for what it was, because it was still in business when we did the rezoning. It should have been zoned so they could have had a printer shop there.
It might have been out.
Could you have a printer shop with the zoning that it has currently?
Right now, we rezoned it to NX1, which is the residential.
Yeah, so you couldn't have the printer shop.
You couldn't have the.
So when we went through the whole rezoning, and we've done this in other properties, that was the current use, and we changed it. And they went out of business, and so now it becomes,
Our zoning did not push them out of business.
no, I'm not saying your zoning pushed them out of business, but that building was never going to be residential unless you tore it down. That to me is beyond, I don't know why we would ever do something like that. That's ridiculous. And to have him even stand up here and have to go through another process and us not saying, absolutely, we're going to rezone it for you right now is ridiculous. I won't be supportive if you guys are going to deny it. That's just me. I'm only one vote. But that is not right. And that is why people say it's hard to do business in this city. It's because of that reason right there. That is exactly why. He invested $3.2 million
Yeah.
in a building that it was empty. $3.2 million.
Sure.
Okay,
Can
Mr. Manager, you have a comment?
Just real quick, had another printing use come forward upon the business closing, they could have entered that building, used that building as a print shop.
If it wasn't vacant for 6 months. If it was
Right.
vacant for 6 months, we would have had to go through this whole process again. You
Correct.
better make sure that we include that little statement also.
Right. So you've done a good job encapsulating the challenge in Des Moines and older communities that need to transition into a different use. The way this is standard in understanding that we need to show in our land use and our zoning what we're projecting the future use of those buildings, and then find a way, and this is our process, so that businesses that can come forward have a slightly different use that can still work through the transition. This is the process we have, and that is standard.
In this process, where we went through the rezoning process, and you and staff picked out what you wanted to rezone certain things, and this isn't the only one we've had this conversation about. This is not the only one we've had the conversation about. And it's unfortunate that we keep seeing, this is a very large piece of property. This is $3.2 million that a very young man probably signed his life away, and now he's gambling to go to the Board of Adjustment. Even with staff support, you don't know how they're going to vote, and then if they come back and they say no, then he can't use this type. You said he has to rezone it to something else.
Okay, let's, any other comments here? And we've got to see if the general public has any other. Okay, are you a party in interest?
Yes.
Okay, give us your name and address, please.
Deborah Roney, 3709 Park Avenue. And I really appreciate everybody listening through this. And Josh, I think if the concern is that if we change the zoning, everybody will want the zoning changed, then I think that leads to, then there's a problem with the zoning. So if everybody wants the zoning changed, if everybody has these issues, then maybe things were done without looking closely at that building. And Stephen, don't you have a picture that shows that building being made into condos? That you showed me? Yeah, on the master plan, where Stephen's building is, it does show condos. So that would mean that strong, sturdy building would be torn down to make those. So I think, and plus, if this is going to have Stephen go back, let's say the cabinet maker moves out, let's say the church moves out, and he's got other businesses that are going to be moving in, is he going to have to go back to the zoning board or whoever that is and ask each time and get their approval?
You might.
Again, they would have the right within 6 months to reoccupy the building under our code with the same use in the building. So they would have those opportunities. And then again, redevelopment of the site would require acquisition of the property, so there'd be compensation to have to be a willing buyer and a willing seller in that situation in the future. Again, we did a long-term master plan for the area, which was the South of Grays Lake Master Plan that looked at conversion of this area for residential development because of the proximity to Grays Lake and future residential housing in the area.
How much housing is going on right now? How much is, I know there's the one unit. How much is going on?
Well, right now, just the first units that gone in are proposed to the east of there. And then we have some on Thomas Beck there was just a plat on the agenda this evening for housing there.
You have to tear everything down that's there if they're going to put housing. You have to tear everything down to the north that's been there for years and it's been occupied for years. Or Confluence, and there's a electrical place, there's other, so they'd have to tear all that down. And then on the other side, which this is probably the newest building that's ever been built on Thomas Beck Road, 1989. And, we're asking to tear down, how many square feet is it? 60,000 square foot concrete building. We're going to tear it down.
Let's be clear, that is not the request.
No, that's what you want them to do, Josh.
No, in future years.
Mayor, if I could, one more comment. We do have to keep this clean. The concern here is that with an industrial zoning, somebody could come in and tear that building down or gut it and then put a strong, heavy industrial use in it that industrial will allow. That's part of the process here, is to narrow that as much as possible. In the event, possibly decades from now, somebody doesn't take advantage of that high industrial zoning. So again, this is at a point that someone that owns the property decides they want to rebuild, that it would need to conform to the master plan. It's not something that has to be done.
Wait a minute. What type of industrial are we so scared of when it was built there and it was a printer? It's fabrication or production or religious assembly. They can't put a junkyard down there. What are we talking about? That's going to be so bad in a 60,000 square foot building. What could be so bad?
You can go
Maybe I'm
through
completely
the
wrong.
zoning district. I can pull it up on the.
It was a printer. That's what it was built for. He went and had a neighborhood meeting. I don't see a bunch of people standing here being mad about it, that he wants to leave it what it is. Do what you guys want, but this is silly, and this is why people say, you know what, we're not going to redevelop in the city of Des Moines. This is exactly why. And we all keep doing the same mistake. It's like Groundhog Day, over and over and over. Same thing.
But let me,
Go ahead.
I'm going to move.
Let's quickly ask, are there any other parties in interest? Seeing none, are there any germane comments from the general public? Anybody want to make any comment?
Hi, my name's Carol Maher. I live in Ward 3. As a member of the Plan and Zoning Commission, where we discussed this item, I was a big believer in the South of Grays Master Plan, which is a plan that it takes a long-term look, right, at what's going down there. Mm-hmm. And the plan for the long-term look is not industrial, and that truck area is being depopulated. As a matter of fact, Copeland is buying a city parcel right on the river. So it's not a plan that's going to happen overnight. This building, I'm betting in 20 years, will probably be worth a lot more because all around it will be developed all this sexy housing. So while I originally on P&Z was like, oh yeah, I don't know, architects on the commission told me, hey, this building will stay up for a long time, and he doesn't need to be the first block in the master plan that changes. It can grow up around him, and then, frankly, I'm not an economist either. I would think his property would be worth more. So that's my thought process on that.
So seeing no further, folks, so I'm going to move 58B, and I'd like to explain, because the goal is to have him use this building. The building will be around for a long time. I explained when we talked, we want you to be successful, we want these particular uses. we also want to protect the master plan, protect the future uses and the work that went into that master planning process. And the best way to do that is to go through the zoning board of adjustment and get a variance so that you can use the building in the way that you want and that we can continue to move forward with the master plan. And if a future use, in the future, that building is sold and someone else comes without this history and wants to redevelop, we have the master plan in place. In addition, it allows for the other parcels. We get that this building is not going anywhere. The building is solid. It's a question about what is the best process to allow you to get the uses that you want out of it now and into the future. And I firmly believe that this master plan is the right way to go and the way to get you your uses. Staff is recommending it as well. Staff is recommending or would recommend that a variance, we heard it today, that a variance be approved. There is a very high likelihood, very, very high likelihood of that. I can't guarantee that because we don't control that other process. But that to me is the best way to accomplish this, to support the master planning effort and to keep that use in this building. So that's why I'm moving item 58B. We want you to be successful. And we want this process to move forward.
I'll second it.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. When would this probably, I look at Mike, pop up on the agenda for the zoning board?
The Board of Adjustment meets monthly. I don't know that they have an application in yet for that, so it'd be the May meeting of the Board of Adjustment. We're not actively enforcing on this, so their uses can continue in the interim. We're working through the rezoning process right now, so there's a stay on any enforcement action, and we would continue that.
When would the zoning board of adjustment meeting be this month if it was to happen?
It's the fourth Wednesday of the month, so the
So you can
application
still-
deadline's
4/26, 5/24.
It seems like we could get it on 4/26.
the application and the notices had to be out like last week on this application. So without a zoning being denied, there's no application. So we could get them on the May meeting. They could meet that submittal deadline, and we could get them on the May meeting for certain.
Okay. All right, everybody, we've got a motion and a second. Now we got to figure out what we're doing here.
3 yes, 3 no. Motion failed.
Motion fails. Is there another motion?
I'll make a motion 58A, 1 and 2.
You want to move 2?
I guess I'll just move 1.
You want to just have one vote now on it?
58A,
Okay.
1.
Been moved.
Do we have a second?
Oh, got a second. Somebody's got a second.
If we vote to approve PAA, then do we have to do 1 and 2?
Just 1. We can only do 1.
You can do 2, but
We're not going to get 6.
looking at the vote, it doesn't look like you're going to have 6 votes.
So we'll just do 1.
We had to have,
Hmm.
Five yes, 1 no. Motion passes.
All right. Takes us on to 59. 59 is a request from Chasing Waterfalls LLC. Christopher Thompson is the officer to amend Plan DSM, creating our tomorrow plan to revise the future land use classification for business park to industrial and to rezone the 2 lots located on the west half of the property at 2215 Sunset Road from EX Mixed Use District to Limited I-1 Industrial District to allow outdoor storage for a landscaping business. A is the first consideration of the ordinance above. B is the final consideration of the ordinance above. The waiver is requested by the applicant and requires 6 votes. Let's quickly ask, are there any parties in interest in the audience? Are there any other parties in interest? If there are, we'd like to have you line up over here. If not, you just have one. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Katie McCain. I'm an attorney at Brown Winnick, 666 Grand Avenue. I'm here on behalf of the applicant Chasing Waterfalls. Christopher Thompson's here as well to answer questions if you have any for him directly. We're applying to rezone from EX to limited I-1 to allow for outdoor storage in connection with their landscaping business. I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Anybody have any questions or comments? All right, thank you. Stay available. Are there any other parties in interest? Didn't see any. How about general public? Anybody from the general public want to make a comment on this? Seeing none? Item 59. Council?
I'll move item 59, 59A, and 59B.
I'll second.
Six yes.
Item 60. Item 60 is on a request from WCMRP, Des Moines Center LLC. Nathan Paul is the officer for review and approval of the First Amendment to the Southdale PUD conceptual plan at 4900 Southeast 14th Street to allow the expansion of a retail use Home Depot to include additional outdoor display and merchandising in the parking lot continued from the March 27th of 2023 council meeting. Quickly, we'll ask any parties in interest in the audience.
Good evening. I'm Joel Rouse. I'm one of the managers at the Home Depot on 4900 Southeast 14th. And this is something that we've been working through for a few months now. And what we've established is additional screening and landscaping on the berm in question on the drive aisle to allow for a more permanent look and location of 6 shed displays in our parking lot to allow for better view and sell-through for our customers, as well as a safer shopping environment due to some challenges we have with homeless population in the area, and allowing those sheds to be away from some of that encampment as we work with the city to abate those individuals as well.
All right. Any questions?
None. We met Friday and we talked, and I think you had a conversation with staff. I think we have a good plan set forth. Hopefully, the owner of the property will put in some of the screening that has been taken out over the years, because there's no trees, no shrubs, and things like that would really help. So I'm happy to move item 16. Thanks for working with us.
All right.
We'll get this done.
I'll second.
We do have a motion and a second. Ask, are there any other parties in interest who would like to speak on this item? Anybody from the general public who would like to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, we've got a motion and a second. Ask everybody to vote.
This doesn't need it.
6 yes.
All right. Item 61. It's on approval of a license agreement with the Des Moines Area Regional Transit Authority, DART, for bus benches in street right-of-way, Council Communication number 23-180. Any comments from the general public regarding these bus benches? Seeing none?
We'll move item 61.
Item 61's been moved and been seconded. Ask everybody to vote.
6 yes.
Item 62. Item 62 is on the reprogramming of prior year's unspent community development block grant funds, a substantial amendment to the 2023 action plan with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development HUD under the 2020 to 2024 consolidated plan, Council Communication number 23-170. Again, let's quickly open it up and see if there's any comments from the general public regarding the community development block grant funds.
Alan Richards, 405 6th Avenue. I've been up on the Hill this morning just talking about block grants more in the mental health area, and an issue came up concerning the public hearing. Public hearings for these block grants, one of them is grantees must document the public participation process, including any public hearings or meetings held, and provide a summary of the input received from the public. My issue with the block grant is, number one, why are we taking good taxpayer money from some local person, sending it to Washington, D.C., and then have a process where they send it back to you? But with that said, my bigger issue is the overall spending trend of government here, where this is unspent. It was supposed to have been done last year. It wasn't done. So why are we coming up with a new way to go ahead and keep spending it? Although I do know there probably was a problem with the community grant where the people that best needed it couldn't come up with the match.
Any other comments?
I guess I just have a quick question. Sheila Kanopla Odole. I'm in District 3, I guess. What is meant by reprogramming?
Mr. Manager, you want to quickly touch that?
Yeah, the communication lays it out, but the different expenditure line items have been reassigned because there were some allocations that were unable to get spent.
So money that wasn't spent is going to be reprogrammed to other projects?
Yes. That are identified
Within what
in
you
the
can-
5-year plan. So
Right.
these are projects that have been identified as needs.
Right, that this block grant can be spent on.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
Anyone else?
If not, I'll move item 62.
Second.
Item 62 has been moved and seconded.
6 yes.
Item 63 is on the consideration of the recommended capital improvement program CIP for fiscal years 2023-24 through 2026-27. Council Communication number 23-173. Again, we'll open it up for general comments from the general public. All right, seeing none. Council?
I'll move item 63.
I'll second it.
All right, item 63 has been moved and seconded.
Good work to you and your staff, Scott. I know it was a challenge, and we kept the tax rate where we needed to be, so appreciate it. We got a lot of work we're going to get done.
6 yes.
Item 64 is on an amendment to the annual budget for the current fiscal year ending June 30 of 2023. Council Communication number 23-173. Again, we'll open it up. Any general comments from the general public?
I'll move item 64, Your Honor.
Been moved and seconded. Ask everybody to vote.
Six yes.
Item 65 is on the proposed budget for the fiscal year ending June 30 of 2024. Council Communication number 23-173. Again, we'll open it up for general comments from the public. All right.
I need that admitted to the record.
Move to receive and file.
I'll second it.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So this is one copy.
Any opposition?
I'll give that to you.
My name's Harvey Harrison. I live in Ward 2, and on behalf of the Just Voices project, I'm asking that you freeze the police budget at its current level and initiate an in-depth study of how we are spending public money on policing. What I've handed you is the balance of my 5 minutes worth of comments, which is what I was promised, and I'd ask that you waive your rules at this point and allow those of us who have an interest, and there are several here in the audience tonight who have an interest in the police budget specifically and believe that it needs to be attended to, and that you are not doing that at this point. To suggest that in 1 minute somebody is going to be effectively be able to talk about an $81 million part of your overall budget, and this is the only opportunity where that's possible. I attended the December meeting on the east side, and I can guarantee you that I had no opportunity to make any kind of a cogent explanation because we didn't have a copy of the budget at that point, which I didn't receive until after December 30 or January 31. So right now I'm asking that you waive that requirement and give me the 5 minutes that I was told I would have, and others.
All right, counsel.
I would move to waive to allow people to speak on the budget for up to 5 minutes.
Well, typically, didn't we have 4 different meetings, public meetings, that we allowed public input? Well, I know at least the one that I was at on my side of town, that we had a public meeting and public was able to speak.
No budget was available at that point, John.
I guess that gets back to where, I brought up before that maybe almost 2 sets of meetings, one's before earlier and then a couple after. That would, once you had the budget approved.
It's up to the council.
Right.
Can transition time.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second that.
Are we allowing 5 minutes? Is that what we're going to allow for each person?
That's what I said, up to 5 minutes.
Okay.
Are there any other speakers out here? 1, 2, 3. Do I see 4?
Sounds good.
Plus a couple over here? 5, 6.
Well, yeah, that's why I think we always say if you have something different to add.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to extend and give additional time of up to 5 minutes. And a voice vote is sufficient, I think. I will say that we would underline it and say we don't want repetition. We want to hear what people have to say, but repetition is not helpful. We want to hear new information. So with that, I guess all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opponents? Hearing none. Harvey, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
So you got 4 more minutes?
If I want to know a person's values, I don't really need to listen to what they say. I just need to look at how they spend money. And the city budget that you're about to approve is a reflection of misplaced values as it relates to the police. According to the 1970 census, the population of Des Moines was 200,587. The 2020 census reports a population of 214,137, a growth of about 7%. Since 1970, primarily in response to the war on drugs and political fearmongers, the Des Moines police budget has grown from about $4 million to a projected $81 million in 23-24, more than 19 times larger. In this period, our police department has become more militarized with no improvement in public safety, while the other city agencies have been starved for resources, as you saw in the civil ethics report if you actually took a look at it. When you look at the police budget now, it consumes about 37% of general fund expenditures. It funds what many of us believe is an overpriced, militarized department not focused on public safety, and a department that refuses to embrace transparency and accountability. You're supporting the wrong set of values. We now have a police chief who refuses to engage in any serious public dialogue with those of us who are proposing needed systemic changes, changes that are recommended by multiple national organizations, as you now know, because you're paying for the studies. You should be embarrassed by this. Over the last 8 years, the community has presented to you evidence of wrongful conduct by the Des Moines Police, pointed out to you the refusal of the police department to meet with us, and pointed out the absolute refusal to adopt any of the recommendations represented by even the people you're paying and appointing. On his watch and years, we have, I believe, somewhere around $2 million of settlements and judgments against the department, all of which were avoidable. You should be appalled by this, as I am. And as we're here today, you are aggressively defending in the federal courts for a second wrongful stop of Jared Clinton, and you'll remember him. I attended a part of that trial, and it'll be ongoing all week, and my suspicion is that you'll have additional judgments to be paid. All of this could be avoided, and it's up to you to make sure it is. During the 2020 protests that followed the murder of George Floyd, the full power of our militarized police department was on display. In addition to the suit pending today, there are now multiple lawsuits pending because of wrongful conduct of the militarized police department during the protest. This should outrage you as it does me. Your police chief, city manager, and some members of this council have ignored the request for creation, for example, of a civilian review board to provide oversight and accountability for our police department, and have instead funded what I consider a ridiculous quest for accreditation without ever explaining to me as a public citizen how it's going to improve public safety in the city. You received from Just Voices earlier an analysis of the police department budget for the upcoming fiscal year that highlights in detail the things that I'm talking about right now. The manner in which your approval of this budget will once again reflect your support for a militarized police department that is still disproportionately targeting people of color, and we have the statistics again this point through now 2021 to demonstrate it, continues to starve those other agencies that in the city that are actually working to improve the public safety of the citizen. This is a budget that police budget needs to be frozen, examined, and transformed. Thanks for the extra time.
Hear, hear.
Thanks, Harvey. And thank you guys for giving us this extra time. I was trying to figure out, like, 60 seconds, what can we do with that for something that's so important? I mean, this is our city that we love, all of us, and we may not always agree, but we want our children to stay here. My daughter has left. She's not coming back. My youngest daughter, she moved. She's not coming back to Des Moines. She's not coming back to Iowa. And that's not all your problem. Some of it's state problems, right, that she doesn't want to deal with. But part of it is this city. What do we want this city to look like in the next 20 to 50 years for our children? And as a white woman, I don't have to deal with a lot of the bias that happens when I'm stopped by the cops. But I have seen it. I volunteer for Just Voices. I've looked at and listened at the videos from the police cars and from the cameras on the lapel. And the rhetoric coming out at the time was that, oh yes, lots of violence from our citizens. I'm going to tell you right now, if you've taken any time to look at these videos, it's traumatizing just to watch them. So you can imagine mostly kids wearing summer clothing and what they were dealing with for the first 3 to 4 protests and then ongoing ones. So as a citizen of this, I'm Laura Faraci. I forgot to give my address.
You just say which ward.
Yeah, I'm in Josh's ward. I can't remember. I think it's 3 or 4.
3.
Thank you, honey. But as someone who has moved here and has made this my home and raised my children here, I don't want them to feel unsafe, and I don't want any of their friends. I don't want any of my family members and my family, my friends and community members to feel unsafe. And many of my Black and brown community members and family members do not feel safe. They do not feel listened to. I think it's interesting that you took the initiative to get 2 different organizations to help you in this this problem that we have, right? To consulting groups. That's great. That's not just your money, that's our money being spent to do that. And we want you to take in consideration all of the things that they've suggested. It's best practice. We've seen it in action in other cities. And at this point, to have almost 40% of our city budget go to our police department, and there's still all this other stuff hanging around, doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense from a doesn't make sense from a corporate point of view, and it doesn't make sense from the city point of view. So I just ask that you freeze the budget until you can get those considerations from the consultants, and then put those into practice, please.
Good evening. I just wanted you all to know, it was about 4 to 5 weeks ago, I talked to Sunny, and she told me that the public hearing, you would be given 5 minutes. So that's where I got my information from, 5 minutes for a public hearing for comments.
Your name?
My name again is Lori Young. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight about the city budget for the fiscal year ending 2024. I live in Ward 1. I work with Just Voices Iowa, and we're a nonprofit that's dedicated to seeing an end to racially biased policing in Des Moines. My comments are focused on the Des Moines police budget specifically, which, as you know, is the largest part of our general fund at around 36%, larger than any other city agency or department. The budget you're about to approve is around $80 million, $80 million with a capital M. Because of its ginormous size, it's the exact reason that you as council members should examine it and closely and freeze it for the upcoming fiscal year, not cut it, just freeze it. With a budget that large, you would think you would have some reasonable questions. Questions like the patrol unit is projected to pay out $2.4 million in contracts. Does this mean that this money is leaving the community and being spent on vendors outside of the city? What are these contracts for? Could these contracts be fulfilled by small, women-owned, minority-owned, disabled-owned businesses within Des Moines? And then there's the projection of $4.5 million in fines and forfeitures. The budget offers little explanation about who is paying these fines, and are they being assessed equitably across neighborhoods and racial groups? I imagine the patrol section is largely responsible for these, so what kind of incentives might that create for police officers? Now, when I worked in the corporate world, my salary, my department's bonuses, was in direct correlation to how well we met our goals and how well we performed. Well, our police department has lost several lawsuits in recent years, costing taxpayers around $1.5 to $2 million in settlements and counting. Is that good performance to you? Is violent and felonious crime going up or is it going down? What are the trends showing? Are homicides being solved? Do we really need 211 cops on patrol at an average cost of $140,000 each per year? You would think you would have these kind of questions. You would think you would be curious about how a police department's budget that is roughly 8 times as much as what is spent on libraries, about 21 times as much as what is spent on neighborhood services, and watch this, a full 100 times as much that is spent on human and civil rights. I don't know, maybe it's just me. Des Moines spends more of its general fund on policing than any other service. Des Moines spends $358 per resident on policing, but only $231 per resident on the fire department, and a mere $17 per resident on neighborhood services. Let's just say for the upcoming fiscal year, we don't hire more officers nor replace those that retire or leave. What would happen? How could that cost savings be used? These are questions that your constituents and the community wants answers to, and we really rely on you to do the work, to do the cost-benefit analysis, to act in a prudent and diligent manner for the best interest of the city. How could Des Moines improve public safety by reallocating some, not all, some of the police budget to address the social needs of hunger, homelessness, healthcare, job training, youth services, and access to and affordability of mental health counseling. Just some things to think about, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Sheila Canopla Odole. I live at 2518 Kenway Drive. I'm in Ward 3. And I'm speaking on this topic for several reasons. First, I want to say that this budget is out of whack. We shouldn't be rewarding the police until after they put in some basic best practices. They shouldn't get a raise until we get some of these implemented. We need to freeze their budget where it's at right now. You spent the money on these consultants. It's good money, good use of taxpayer money, but now let's put things in place. We want a safer community. We need transparency and accountability in our police force. I don't trust them. You know, some of you know that my children are mixed race. It terrifies me at night when my son is out late because I'm afraid he might get pulled over. Here in Des Moines, I shouldn't have to be afraid of that here in Des Moines. My daughter, she got arrested up at the Capitol and she got stepped on by the police. I still have the shirt she was wearing with the footprint on it, and they ground her face in the dirt. Now, whether it was DMPD or not, can't say. Things were pretty chaotic that day, and they got boxed in, but she was trying to help people get away safely. And, you know, I sympathize with our African-American families, the parents and the grandparents who worry about their children being accidentally killed by our police. That is unacceptable. We need to do the basic best practices that can make things better. We need to have responsibility and accountability. And I think, you know, we need to send that message by freezing their budget until some of these things start getting implemented. I don't think that's asking a lot. I think it's good use of taxpayer time and money. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jean O'Donnell. I live in Ward 3. And I also would like to speak to the disproportionality of the police budget relative to everything else that we do in this city. I agree with the previous speaker. I don't feel safer because of how much money we're spending on a militarized police force. What makes communities safe is when all of us work together, and I know you all are trying to work together as city council people, but I think we let this propaganda of fear overtake our ability to make sound decisions about how much policing we need. We don't need to fear each other and corral people into impoverished neighborhoods and then surround them with police. I hardly see any police ever in my neighborhood. So where are those 37% of our budget and 100 some patrol people? Where are they? They're all surrounding those other neighborhoods. And instead of spending the money on police to keep people corralled in poverty and without the education or the health care that they need, let's spend the money on that instead and raise people up. And there are studies that show that that reduces crime. I would like you all to present to the public what evidence you have that the amount of money we're spending on the police is really being effective. I would like to see some studies or statistics. So I challenge you all to show that to me.
Good evening. My name is David Whitkey. I live at 2521 48th Place in Beaverdale. I recognize that there are a goodly number of reasons for us to be proud of our police force and of most of the individual policemen thereupon it. Concurrently, I'm aware, and by now I think you should be aware, that there is a very deep thread of distrust and dissatisfaction about some of our policing aspects and about your supervision of the police department that are beginning to grow throughout our citizenry. I've been through the Just Voices analysis that was provided to us all. I've been through it very carefully. I think it's pretty well balanced, and I think it focuses attention on a number of specific issues that warrant careful and deep examination and consideration by you folks. And if you are not yet fully aware of the growing dissatisfaction throughout our community, I would like to cite the most recent city council election in Beaverdale, which is hardly a hotbed of radicalism. But that election, I think, should have sent to everyone in the city a clear message about the growing dissatisfaction with the council's supervision of some of the policing aspects. So please look carefully at that report. I trust that you did and will, and give serious consideration to the individual points in there that obviously warrant attention. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City Manager. Brad Titus, 2832 Ridge Road, Des Moines, Iowa, Ward 3. I'll keep this pretty brief. I participated in 19 of the 40-plus protests in the summer of 2020. I promised my wife that I would not go to jail, that I wouldn't eat any rubber bullets or tear gas, and I honored that promise. I have quite a number of friends, relatives, fellow church members, children that didn't make those promises, and they did get other results. I did observe what was going on during that summer. I was unbelievably unimpressed with the lack of command and control, the lack of professionalism, with the response from the Des Moines Police Department. I again promised my wife that I would not share what I really feel tonight so I don't get hauled out of here. And I also promised some of my colleagues that I wouldn't call for what I would like to see. So I would call for a frozen budget. I would call for honest evaluation and implementation of the recommendations of the two consulting organizations that you've hired, one that has reported out, one that will report out. And I will say ditto to what Harvey Harrison and Lori Young from Just Voices have said, and call for a freezing of the DMP budget until those reports have been fully evaluated and implemented, and we can rationally say that we have regained positive control of the policing function in the city of Des Moines. Thank you.
Alan Richards, 405 6th Avenue. And I was coming up here to say to freeze the whole budget. $1 billion is a point where we need to think. In fact, I tried to get in where I would be in a position to lower the budget by 25%, at least for the county attorney in that process. So that's what I'm here. I do want to follow up about the public hearing. I got all the rules on these federal block grants where they have these systems where you would pre-register, and if there's a block of people, you try to allocate time and you give them more time. So I do appreciate it here. But with that said, with the police, I practice law and I've done the murder cases here, and I want to talk about it, the hours and hours that just multiply up in the wrong direction, where you have 31 officers come in to testify and they're all there, and they depending on the attorneys, you got depositions and they come back again and again and again. So 5 times the derivative is 5 times. So one traffic cop standing there to guard in the neighborhood because I think the police do a good job, and then all that money we spend to make sure that we get through there. Well, a lot of that could be cut out if you just had intelligent people trying to figure out how to make the culture better. And with that said, and even when I talk to these 31 Des Moines police officers, I've asked every one of them about their training in ethnicity. And so every one of them said they had no training, except for 2. They had 4 hours of training while they were flying them to Afghanistan about different ethnic types of people. And I just found that troubling. Now, my mom's cousin was the mayor of Marion. And of course, I'm talking about the derivatives. Well, they're cops over there. They pull you up for OWI. They give you 2 questions. I'm towing your car, taking you to a motel, or taking you to jail. What's your answer? They say, okay, take the car. The cops over there think, well, I don't have to do the derivative. I don't do the reports. I don't have to follow up. I got the guy safe. I got the car off the road. I don't have to go to court. I don't do more reports. I don't do depositions. And if that cop is that way, he spends half his time just having to deal with that one cherry-picking case that he got. And if it's against the wrong ethnic people, it's bad. But in any event, the spending's too high. I'm asking for governments to stop, to try to somehow, let's talk it over. Polk County has a criminal justice coordinating council. I don't even think they meet anymore, so there's a lot of good police around this community, around the county, and it can be done on less money. The county attorneys, I was coming up here to ask for get rid of a half a position, and I think you can get rid of a whole position if you just start analyzing from the top down that we want to save money, but we want to do a better job as well. How that's done is just going to be good people like you, because you do good, and I think that IT people you're putting in there is good so that we can get good reports across the board. So, thank you.
Hello, my name is Adam Callanan. I live in Ward 3. Wanted to also say I agree with the calls for a frozen police budget and an honest accounting with the reports. The city paid a lot of money for reports and recommendations that it doesn't seem to be honoring at this time. Hopefully that changes. Also wanted to talk about just the budget as a whole. These budget meetings in December, it's awesome that we had budget meetings before the budget came out. They were mostly informational sessions, though. They weren't public council meetings. They weren't handled the same way. Council decided they didn't want to have to announce and go through all the open meeting rules, so there weren't allowed to be like majority of city council people there in previous years. I know that the input that is received in those sessions does not always actually come back to council. It doesn't always make it up the whole way, which is a shame, but just wanted to echo the need to have more budget meetings that actually are full public meetings, open meetings with council. Somebody before me brought up that Indira Shoemaker won a city council election on similar calls. I would also like to mention that Kimberly Graham also won. It's at the county level, but it's the same people of this city voting in that. They're all kind of sending the same message election after election. I'm guessing in November we will see similar things with that city election. That is the way things are going. Also wanted to talk about, again, just with the police budget, a lot of the funds we see, I feel are used dishonestly. We see the STAR team, when they ask for funding, a lot of times it's phrased as like they're like a counter-terror team. I can tell you that when I've seen the STAR team, it's been here in city council meetings where we're talking about police spending. They come and have harassed and arrested people who are speaking against the police. So that's where a lot of that STAR team funding does actually go. And just the police spending in general does not get the accounting that other departments do. Most of the police spending items end up on the consent agenda and are just things that happen behind the scenes based on Police Chief Wingert asking for things is what it appears like. They aren't public like other departments are, where they might come and ask for things and there's a public discussion. It just seems like they're all shoved into the consent agenda without any true discussion. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you very much for listening to all of us. I'm Regina McRae. I live in Ward 1, Lower Beaver Road. And 4 things, I guess. I support the request of a freeze for the budget of the police department. But I also want to see that money put into increased funds for community support services. Talk a little bit about that in a minute. Reduction in the military-style equipment on our police department and the data that's coming from the traffic stops being made available to the public. So our city, as many of you know and have spoken about, is underfunded in a number of areas in terms of housing, in terms of mental health, in terms of social services, things, community outreach, and things that can help our citizens. I think we call upon our police too often for things that are not in their bailiwick. I think that, and the reason I think citizens do that is because they don't know where else to call, because we don't have enough services in the area of mental health to help families, to help elders, to help young people. And we need some of the money redirected into an area that can help folks not make those emergency calls or the police not having to respond to those. I want to compliment that the city has combined with Broadlawn's Medical Center for that wonderful care team to be able to help with mental health. And so I just support that there be more programs like that with other community agencies that can help address the real needs that's below what's going on in those calls. I also want to thank the police chief for the special order that was made in October in regards to documenting every single traffic stop that there is. I'm not sure that the general public knows that as much, but I'm really glad that it's being done, and very much looking forward to what the results of that will be. Imagine there'll be fewer stops. Imagine that we might see less disparity in who is being stopped, and perhaps an improved relationship with our Black and brown community. So I think that's the main things that I wanted to talk about. I'm grateful for your willingness to listen, and I appreciate your taking into consideration all that you've heard. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Sharon Zanders-Akis, Iowa CCI, and Des Moines resident. I wasn't going to speak, and I don't have anything prepared, but as I'm listening to all the other speakers, my mind went back to the year 1989, when I moved here to Des Moines. I moved here in June of 1989, and by August, I was stopped by the Des Moines PD. I was leaving with my two daughters, who were in the back seat of the car. The sun was just setting. I was at a stop sign. Cherry lights come on. Two officers approach each side of my vehicle. Now, I'm stopped, so I can't figure out why I'm being stopped. When they approached, I asked the first question, what did I do wrong? I was met with flashlights in the car, looking at the back seat where my kids were. Not really provided an answer. They went around the car, searched, looked at the back trunk, whole 9 yards. And I do want to say that I still have Black Hawk County plates on there. And then after they got through, they said, well, your back tail light wasn't working. Go get that fixed. And that was that. Of course, I checked my back tail light once I got home, and the tail light was working. I don't think you understand the trauma, and organizationally working on this, it's personal. And for a lot of people, it's personal. If you haven't had to experience it, it's not a comfortable place to be. With everything that you've heard, I'm not going to be redundant in what you've already heard, because I think you know what you need to do, which is really freeze that budget. But step back and rethink. So many people are telling the stories, and they're not changing from 1989 to now. Same things are happening. But rethink it. And then, as I believe it was Lori said earlier, you reward people when you see a job well done. But I cannot sit down and not acknowledge those of you on this council that have been listening. We appreciate that you have heard community voices. We've shared some things with you. And it didn't start off that way. But we do see improvements being made, not as quickly as we like, because if we want to see them the way we wanted to, it'd be there. But unfortunately, it takes work. It takes more conversations. It takes trust. It takes transparency. It takes all these things to build community and a relationship with each and every one of you. So rather than look at us as the enemy, we're here out of concern and love for our community, and we will continue to fight. We will continue to stand. We will continue to say what we know is happening out here and hope that you will do your jobs and take some initiatives, some steps to actually, that we as Des Moines can be proud and say, We did that thing, and we did it together. So I'm not up here to badger you, but to let you know that I acknowledge what you've been doing. I'm not afraid to say that publicly. We got more work to do, and I hope you're listening about this budget, that it just shouldn't be a done deal. Please take a look at what are we and why are we increasing this budget for the police if we're not seeing improvement in the way that they are policing. Thank you.
Laurel Clinton. I'm a Des Moines City resident. Good evening, Council. As some of you heard, my son is in court for the second time for a stop. It happened in 2019. Got you aware of that. You guys are afraid of reform, but the scariest time of my life is when my son is here visiting me for whatever reason. Now, we've asked for many things like reform and accountability. And you have to understand that Scott Sanders, our city manager, but so are you guys. So are we as residents here. We don't come here to badger you and tell you off and piss you off. We come here to work with you for improvements when we see deficiencies in our community. We're crying out for you as our representatives to represent us. And spending more money without telling people who are asking you, why is this budget being increased? And then you don't want to have any answers. So it only leads to more questions. What's wrong with telling people why you have to have an increased budget? What's the rush? Why can't you tell us? Why can't you, our council, our representatives, be responsible to your residents? I'm going to make this short and sweet, but I'm going to ask you, all of you, to delay the budget. Give us an opportunity to understand if you believe that that's the right thing to do. There's no reason to rush it. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Aaron Kongum. I am a Drake University student, so I believe I'm in Ward 1. I come here with members of my student organization, the Roosevelt Institute. We're a policy-making group. And I can't advocate for a freeze or not. I don't think I have enough information on Des Moines policing in particular, but I'm from the city of West Des Moines. I'm the DEI intern for their new DEI office. And I think what we're seeing here is an issue of communication. I feel like your YouTube channel, Twitter, and Facebook isn't active enough in regard to specifically policing issues. And I think that could be a big problem with accessing it. I see that you started a community policing and code enforcement policy and practice review committee, which I'm very impressed by as a Des Moines resident, but I feel like we could do a lot more in promoting and making this a lot more visible. Maybe starting a TikTok, having a young person from one of the local high schools come and run it, so that we can have a lot more engagement with the youth. Because I want the city of Des Moines to be a place where a lot of students at Drake can feel like, yeah, I can stay here, and I know that this is a city that not only will advocate for the desires I want to see, but then also publicize it and make a point out of it. So that's all I have to say, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
My name's Elijah Alsop. I'm also a Drake student. And last year, my car was broken into. I had a lot of things stolen, and I called the police. I got everything done. And afterwards, they said, we'll be in touch with you. Never happened. Called multiple times. Nothing ever happened. And that's okay. I'm fine. But the thing that worries me is the item stolen from my car. It wasn't the most expensive golf clubs that I had back there. It was a box of granola bars and my laptop, which I'm sure they probably tried to sell or something. But the granola bars and a pair of shoes was more important to them because it's probably out of need that they went up to my car and took things out of it. And I think if we spent more money on taking these communities out of poverty, things like that wouldn't happen as often. I wouldn't even need to call the police, even when I don't get any answers back. Thank you.
All right, council, any thoughts regarding item 65? Had a lot of input.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'll just respond to some of what we heard. I do plan on supporting the budget. And, that includes the public safety components of the budget. And I'll say, and where I start the conversation on public safety, the folks on the front lines in our community have one of the hardest jobs in our community, one of the most important jobs in our community. And they deserve our support. And I think our budget does provide that support. I'll also talk just more broadly about the way that I think I have approached these issues and I'll continue to approach these issues. And I believe that we can continuously look at how we can improve how we provide public safety services and how we provide policing. And we can take steps to change. We can also take steps to look at how we're doing things. Some of that we've taken those steps, and we've done, I think, some good work and look with some of the task force and recommendations we've created. We have to follow up on some of those things. So, for example, I continue to support the implementation of all of the recommendations of the marijuana task force. It's good that we're talking about steps up at the Capitol, and we're supporting legislation to decriminalize and legalize. But there's more that we can do, and I continue to support making marijuana enforcement the lowest enforcement priority. We took some important steps with the study by Public Works LLC to look at data analysis and practices there. And I am glad that we are working to implement those recommendations. And again, I support implementing the recommendations that were identified in that report. I think those recommendations will help us improve the type of service that we provide. I support additional resources for the mobile crisis unit and the care team. I think those have been a much needed step so that we can respond to more calls for service with the right service the first time. And I think we've seen good results from that. I think there's room for that to continue to grow. And I support that approach. I'm also interested in seeing the results, and I'm glad we are doing the study with 21st Century Policing. I'll also say that I support the effort that we're making from an accreditation perspective. Again, looking at practices nationally and best practices, I think that's an important effort too. Finally, I'll talk about or note that one of the recommendations in the Public Works LLC that I also support is the creation of a civilian review board, which we've talked about for a while, and I support an approach I support an approach that's similar, though not identical, to the city of Cedar Rapids. And I think we can do all these things and we can continue to do more. We should always be working to improve the way we provide public service. And I'm glad that we are taking steps. I'm willing to look at additional steps and have additional conversation. It's the type of thing that I am constantly learning more as I engage. And we should look for opportunities, and we should constantly, as a city, be looking at how we can improve the service we provide. And if there are ideas or practices that we can be implementing, I hope we'll continue to do that. And that is my approach, but I plan on supporting this budget and appreciate all the good work that's gone into it.
Connie?
I just want to echo too, I'm going to support the budget, and I think that we are making strides to look at things differently. I think we have the reports that have come in based on what Josh has talked about. So I think that we're ongoing, and I've always been the proponent of the expanding the mental health crisis team. I think we've seen once you do implement something new, it has been very effective, and I do think we need to expand that. But within our budget too, we can still do that. So I think within the dollars we have, that we need to look at it and continue to expand that and look at other programs that we can change. And I look forward to the 21st Century Policing, their report coming in. And I think we're already, the data information and providing the tools that we need, whether it be in public safety or any of our areas, the tools that they need to get the correct data to analyze how we are doing city services, no matter what it is, to be more effective and more efficient. So that we can relay dollars into the areas we really do need to. So I plan on supporting this budget also.
I'll move item 65,
I'll
Your
second
Honor.
it.
Carl, did you have anything?
Without sawing the sawdust, I appreciate the opportunity to work toward the implementation of the Public Works and 21st CP. And these changes move at glacial speeds, but I appreciate the chance to engage with the Iowa's with CCI racial justice team, and I hope you'll continue to invite me to those meetings. And I think we've made some good progress. We have more to do.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I did a second.
Okay. I will say to all the citizens, we continue to appreciate your input and your thoughts. We hear from lots of citizens in the neighborhoods that we go out to. They meet us on the street, they meet us in the grocery stores, they meet us in the pharmacies, they meet us everywhere we go. There's a lot of work that we need to do as we look at 21st century policing, as we look at what we do and how we do it. We also are listening to a lot of our youth who are kind of shaken up by some of the things that have happened in and around the schools and in Second Chance, and start right here. There have been some, and up by East High School, and some of the other areas that have happened. I've heard students say they want more protection. Question is how? How do we do that? How do we make those students feel safe in the school? Heard a 10-year-old say that he sometimes is afraid to go to school because he's afraid there's guns in the lockers, there's guns in the hands of students, and he doesn't feel safe. Said it at a public meeting. So not only do we need to work here as a city with our citizens, As we look behind us up the hill, there's some people that are working under those gold domes that need to hear the reality also of what's going on in and around this state and around this country. And I don't think the solution is to put more weaponry on the streets. I think they need to hear our voices up there too. They need to hear our concerns. They need to hear our citizens' concerns. They need to look at the young people and look at the fear that's in their eyes. We need to find a way, calm that fear down, and again, work together as a community. I also am going to vote to support this budget, but I want you to know that we're going to continue to look, we're going to continue to listen, and we're going to continue to look how we spend our money and where we spend it, and think about what public safety means. We've talked about mental health and working with Broadlawns. We are approaching some of those 911 calls differently today than we did 12 months ago or 24 months ago or back to 1989. There's some different thoughts and different ways to look at it. We need to look at it. We are so many years beyond the start of this fear situation. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for your input, and let's keep thinking together and working together.
6 yes.
Takes us to item 66. On the 2023 Sidewalk Replacement Program, a resolution approving the plan specifications, form of contract documents, engineer's estimate, receive and file bids, and designating the lowest responsible bidder as BT Construction LLC. Barrett Tucker is the owner. $356,975. Council Communication number 23-182. A is approval of the contract and the bond and permission to sublet. We'll ask the general public to make any comments they would like regarding the plan specifications, form of documents, engineer's estimate, or the low bidder designation. Any comments?
I see none, Your Honor. I'll move 66 and 66A.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Ask everyone to vote.
6 yes.
All right, that completes our regular hearings at 6:48. Let's quickly go back to item 43. Councilmember Gatto is asked to pull the submittal of the Center Street Park and Ride Facility annual budget to the Des Moines Area Regional Transit Authority, DART, and authorization of budget expenditures. Council Communication number 23-173. Councilmember Gatto.
Mayor, thank you. Just real brief. I think we need to point out how much we've given to DART. And so in the year 2022, we gave $320,000. In FY23, we gave $800,000. And in FY24 now, we're going to give $1.3 million. So that's almost $2.5 million over the past 3 years to support DART and any other transportation alternatives that go above and beyond our public transportation commitment that we already do. We are already at our cap, our property tax levy cap. We are one of the few communities that are at that cap. But we are the only community that is giving extra dollars to DART. And I think it's just time that we make sure that all the residents know that we are participating above and beyond what we would do, what any other community has done. And so I know that DART is looking for a different funding source, and that's great. But I'm letting everyone know that if they're unsuccessful, I do not want to hear that our service in the city of Des Moines is going to be cut because they're unsuccessful. And I'm looking at you, Josh, as our representative to take that message to the DART board and others and all of our residents to know we have contributed $2.5 million extra over the last 3 years to get them through their shortfall, to get them working through their shortfall of funding. So I'm happy to support this, and I will move item 43, but I just want that to be on record. And we've asked, and I know Elizabeth isn't here, for the last 9 years, they'd come every year. We had asked what we're doing for the funding. You know, they changed the governance before they did the funding, and now they're trying to figure that out. Never got any answers. We've asked, and I'm very supportive of DART by every vote that I've taken, but I do not want our service to be cut if they're unsuccessful. And so I'll move item 43.
I'll second it.
Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Please.
I appreciate the work that this council has done with DART. And so far, I will just point out the dollars that we've contributed are dollars from the park and ride, which those dollars are required to go to transit. They can't be used for any non-transit purposes under federal guidelines. So we haven't really gone above and beyond the transit allocation. But more importantly, what we're doing and what is going on at DART, there are some structural budget deficits. And I appreciate the work that this council did to call attention and to support the work up at the Capitol, which will help with the structural budget deficit. But also, if you look at the service and you look at what is going on at DART, the vast majority of the service is service to our residents. And not everyone appreciates that service, but that service is absolutely critical to our residents. It's critical to being the type of community I think we want to be. We talk a lot about the lists that we're proud to be on and how we are more livable than other communities of a similar size. You can't be that type of community without a strong transit system, without making sure that your community is accessible to all your residents, without being able to connect people to jobs, to healthcare, to childcare. Transit does all of those things, and transit is absolutely essential for accomplishing that. And so we're going to continue to work through solutions and work on the funding. I get you don't want any of our service cut, but
No, that should never be on the table.
I agree with that.
Okay.
But
That was my only comment.
That also means that we've got to be willing to engage in conversation on what the solutions are, should we not get the help we need up at the legislature. What the solutions are going forward. And we'll have time to have those conversations. But there aren't easy answers in terms of how we solve that. It's a tough situation, and we'll keep working through that. But if we lose members to DART, we'll have an even bigger budget hole that we've got to fill. And again, as you pointed out, we're at our levy cap. So there aren't easy solutions there. It's either get more revenue from somewhere or cut service. And I agree, we shouldn't be cutting service. But that means that this council's got to be willing to be part of the solution and part of that conversation going forward.
Well, we did go above and beyond the 2.5 million. That is above and beyond what no other community has given any other money to backfill any structural deficits that I asked for 9 years to Elizabeth what her strategy was and never came up with the solution. No other community that is at their cap or any other community that has the low job centers that we're taking our residents and going there and they're working in other communities that keep threatening to pull out. You need to be the voice that says, okay, if you want to pull out, you're not going to have any workers there. That's what I expect you as our representative to be and to do. We did go above and beyond, Josh. Whether it can be used for any other thing transit-wise, I'm sure we could have figured something out. But that is the best place for it. I'm just saying to everyone else so they understand, because I don't think our residents see, they see their assessment, they see what they're paying, they see what they're paying to DART. We're at our max. This deal was done 20-some years ago when the MTA was turned to DART, and we're at our cap. And no other community wants to go up to that cap. But we're shelling out more money and more money of taxpayer dollars. I do not want our services cut, and you need to be that vocal voice for us since you're our DART member.
I'm okay delivering that message.
Perfect.
I don't want any
That's
services
all I'm
cut.
asking. That's all I'm asking.
Perfect. No service cuts to DART.
We've got to vote.
Six yes.
Moves us to item 67. This is approving an agreement with the Des Moines Parks and Recreation Foundation for the Evelyn K. Davis Park Basketball Court Improvement Project, Council Communication number 23-166. Any comments, Council?
I'll move item 67.
Been moved and seconded.
I want to thank the Park and Rec Foundation for that.
Six yes.
Item 68. 68 is amending Chapter 114 of the Municipal Code regarding traffic regulation changes as follows. Council Communication number 23-185. A is a parking modification, 12th Street between Keosauqua Way and Crocker Street. B is the corner clearance parking restrictions, 1, 11th Street and Garden Avenue. 2, the Fleming Avenue and Lower Beaver Road. C is parking modification on the north side of Grand Avenue between 17th Street and 18th Street.
Mayor, I'll move item 68, A, B, and C.
Second.
And pursuant to Rule 42A, move to waive the second and third reading.
And I'll second that too.
All right, been moved and seconded.
Six yes.
All right. Item 69, amending Chapter 90 of the Municipal Code regarding Housing Services Board members, Council Communication number 23-171. Any thoughts, comments, or a motion?
I'll move item 69.
I'll second.
69 has been moved and seconded.
And I'll waive the second and third reading pursuant to Rule 42A.
As part of this motion, right?
Absolutely.
And I seconded it.
Six yes.
Item 70. Item 70 is amending Chapter 94 of the Municipal Code relating to public improvement bids pursuant to Iowa Code Chapter 26 and amending Chapter 2 of the Municipal Code relating to an exception for the Iowa Code Chapter 26A from the definition of services. Council Communication number 23-177. A is the final consideration of the ordinance above. The waivers requested by the Engineering Department requires 6 votes. B is authorizing the issuance of a notice of intent to enter into a guaranteed maximum price contract pursuant to the Iowa Code Chapter 26A for the Des Moines Fire Station number 4 replacement and authorization for staff to proceed pursuant to Iowa Code Chapter 26A. Council Communication number 23-176. Any
70A and B, and pursuant to 42A, waive the...
It's in there.
As a final consideration.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
I'll second it.
Does B need to be?
No,
Okay.
we're good.
Never mind.
Josh?
6 yes.
All right, takes us to item 71. Item 71 is request to speak as follows. I think everybody knows the rules. We, this evening, we'll start with Carolyn Eulenhake Walker.
Carolyn U. Walker, Ward 2. The nature crisis that we talked about today with NOMO May and the climate crisis are connected. Poet Hirschfeld says, "We will not save this earth because it's a good idea. We will save this earth and its beings because we love it and we love them." The latest IPCC report on the video clip makes this connection between nature and the climate crisis. And that just shows the connection between the nature crisis and the climate crisis. We will have a new first draft coming up of our climate action plan. It's time for us to all have a vision on this. Thank you.
Our second speaker is Thomas Rosberg.
Thank you. The No More proclamation that we heard this evening is a great start and tool for helping landowners transform mown landscapes with their heavy use of fossil fuels, fertilizers, and pesticides into naturescapes that support native biodiversity and provide ecosystem services, such as the pollinators we talked about. Non-native species have been coming to North America ever since Europeans and others set foot on its shores. Over the past 200 years or so, more than 50,000 foreign plant and animal species have become established in the United States. A subset of them have become invasive. As per executive order, an invasive species is a species that is, number one, non-native. It's not native to the ecosystem where it's present. And two, whose introduction causes or is likely to cause economic or environmental harm or harm to human health. Invasive species are the number one threat to natural areas and native species. Damage and control costs are estimated nationwide at more than $138 billion per year. Think about all that tax money that could be going to something else. It's estimated that about 14% of non-native species become invasive. That means we have about 7,000 invasive species. The first step in creating yet another invasive species is to introduce or use a non-native species. Because non-native species did not evolve in the place where they are now present, they do not have to live by all the rules of nature. This allows them to overrun and displace native species. And invasive species and climate change are connected. Climate change can accelerate and exacerbate many of the most severe impacts of invasive species. Likewise, invasive species make both the urban landscapes we live in and the natural systems we all depend on less resilient to the effects of climate change. We must all do our part to protect native biodiversity, conserve resources, and mitigate climate change. Using native species in our landscapes is important and the right thing to do.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion, items 71A and B to receive and
Receive.
file.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. And,
Don't
motion
hear
to
any.
adjourn.
And we have a motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none. You sit adjourned. I want to thank everybody for your input this evening. And until next time, this meeting's over.